Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
All right, first and foremost, we want to give all thanks and praise to the Most High, Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Wa Rawak, for those who do not speak the Hebrew. For those who do not speak the Hebrew, that is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? Now, as many of you know, we've been at this Children of Israel series for, 7-8 months now? And we've come to the final part of this particular series. Now, this will not be the last time that you hear us speak on certain things concerning the tribes, because always there's information that we weren't able to divulge in a lot of these parts. For example, the tribe of Naphtali, right? Salakia. But as many of you know, there was a lot of things throughout the series that we weren't able to go over. So in the future, in short videos, we'll bring out all of that information so that way, as it comes, you all have it. But today we're to be going into the tribe of Benjamin. But before we get into that, we want to say shalom to all of our brothers and sisters across four corners of the earth, our brothers and sisters in Sierra Leone. Shalom, but Elder Johannes is over there teaching, I believe, as we speak. And the brothers and sisters in the Philippines as well. Also want to remind everyone that that Purim will be coming up very soon in the coming month.
Oh, praise.
So all praises to the Most High for that. Purim is definitely one of my favorite memorials, holy days within this truth. So everybody preparing for that. So reminder about that. And we're going to go ahead and be prepared to jump into this lesson on the tribe of Benjamin.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that we're actually using a different streaming platform today. So it's our first time using it. We don't, it's got a lot of different things to it. So we're trying to figure it all out. So just bear with us through this. We don't know what we're going to run into.
But it looks like it's working good so far. So I'll praise to the Most High for that, and going to make sure that the devil don't try to get involved in this thing. All right?
Definitely let us know. Let us know if you see something on your end that, doesn't look quite right.
All right. So the tribe of Benjamin. We've been through all of the northern kingdom tribes, and the reason why I held on, because we did Levi and Judah, and the reason why I held on the third southern kingdom tribe is because the story of Benjamin goes right in line with where we just came from with Ephraim and Manasseh. Where Ephraim and Manasseh is, we see Benjamin come in directly after. Benjamin is the youngest child, obviously, of Jacob. So his story comes towards the end, and it's important that this is the tribe that we finish with, right? So to get started, let's go to Genesis 49 and 27. Let's get Genesis 49 and 27.
Genesis chapter 49, verse 27.
Before we get started, I'll remind everybody: like, share, comment, subscribe, right? And make sure that you share this lesson so that other people can see it. We do have some interference.
Okay,
we'll listen out a little bit, but let's get Genesis 49, 27.
Genesis chapter 49, verse 27. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey.
Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. Read.
And at night he shall divide the spoil.
So it says, in the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Right now, we're going to understand. We're going to get to understand exactly what this means as we go a little bit forward. But I just sort of wanted to introduce these particular passages of scripture before we actually get into the breakdown. So let's go to Deuteronomy 33 and 12.
Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 12. And of Benjamin he said, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, and the Lord shall cover him all the day long.
The beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him. What does that mean? It means, who is the beloved of the Lord? His people, right? So his people dwell in safety by Benjamin, right? And we're going to understand why it is that the Most High says that by Benjamin, his beloved, the children of Israel, dwell in safety, right? And it says that the Most High shall cover him all the day long. Read.
And he shall dwell between his shoulders.
And he shall dwell between his shoulders, right? Now, when you look at where Benjamin in ancient Israel was settled, he was settled between Judah and Ephraim, right? And in Benjamin's land was the temple built, right? A lot of people don't know that a lot of that Benjamin is where the land of Benjamin is where Jerusalem leaked into, right? So when it says that the Most High shall cover him all the day long, he shall dwell between his shoulders, it's talking about the placement of the temple and how he sat in between two different types of royalties, the leader of the southern kingdom and the leader of the northern kingdom, right? He was sandwiched between the two. In a sense, you can consider him the glue that holds the two together. Right? The connection that Joseph had with Benjamin versus the connection that Judah had with Benjamin. Right? Now, Benjamin is the youngest son of Jacob and Rachel. And after Joseph's presumed death, which we went over last week, he became Jacob's favorite and most protected. Right? He became his favorite and most protected. Because remember, Rachel was the wife that Jacob loved. She was the wife that he wanted, right? So when Joseph died, not only did Benjamin sort of assume that role as Jacob's favorite, as his favorite, but he also became the one that he protected. This is the last remaining child that I have of the wife that I love. Because remember, Rachel died in childbirth with Benjamin. Benjamin was all he had left of Rachel, right? Which is why he was reluctant to send Benjamin with Judah to Egypt. He was like, listen, last time I sent one of Rachel's boys with y'all, he ain't come back. Right? So Benjamin was the son of Jacob's old age. What does that mean? This is the time in which Jacob has left his prime. He's not in his prime years. He's not in the peak of his strength. Or he can't, at this point in time, he can't see as well as he used to, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens as a man begins to become older? He becomes more lenient, right? He can't focus and be as hands-on as he was with the children of his youth, like Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, for example, right? So what characteristics do we see of Benjamin as a result? He's a little bit less disciplined. He doesn't possess the same discipline that his older brother has, right? He has a longer leash to do really what he wants, right? And he doesn't possess as much restraint and discipline as his other brothers. And we not only see this in Benjamin, but we see this in his children as well, right? So let's go back to Genesis chapter 49 and now begin to break down what it is that's talking about. Genesis 49.
Genesis 49:27. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf in the morning.
So it says, Benjamin shall raven as a wolf, right? That word raven means that word raven means to devour or destroy. This means that he devours and destroys his prey without mercy. How do we know that? The word raven in Hebrew is H2963, which is taraf, which means to tear or rend, right? So he tears and he rends like a wolf. We have an image, a ravening wolf. This is what a ravening wolf looks like. This is, if you've ever had a dog and you're training a dog, right? And you see your dog begin to show teeth, you usually pop them, right? Because that means that somebody about to get bit. The dog is agitated, right? This is what a ravening wolf looks like. This is what Jacob described his son Benjamin as. He's a ravening wolf. He tears to shreds. He rips to pieces. If you've ever seen a wolf pack eat or attack, this is what he describes Benjamin as. Benjamin's children as. They attack, they tear, they destroy like a wolf. This means that Benjamin will be one of the most fierce and merciless tribes in battle. They didn't just attack. They didn't just defeat. They destroyed. Look at an animal after a wolf gets to it. It's almost unrecognizable. Right? They possessed little restraint, but great athleticism and strategy. Imagine someone who's ruthless, but almost rage. Think about the way a wolf pack moves. It's order. There's order. There's unity. But there's a level of rage. There's a level of rage and chaos involved. It's a wild mix of both. They're showing the athleticism and the strategy, but straight up relentless and merciless. That's a ravening wolf. How do we know that this is what Jacob is talking about? How do we know that this is describing the battle or wild animal-like characteristics of the tribe of Benjamin? Because Benjamin said so himself in his testament. Let's get the testament of Benjamin.
Testament of Benjamin, chapter 2, verse 24. If ye therefore, my children, walk in holiness according to the commandments of the Lord, ye shall again dwell securely with me, and all Israel shall be gathered unto the Lord.
We'll see each other again in the kingdom. Read.
Verse 25. And I shall no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages.
And I shall no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your chat. Yeah. So clearly Benjamin, when Benjamin is speaking here, he's referring to what he was told by his father when he's talking to his sons here. He's like, listen, if you walk in the way of the Lord, you shall surely dwell in safely by me, and I will no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages. Right? He's speaking of his children here. What is a ravage? What does it mean to ravage something? It's not just fighting and winning a battle. No, winning isn't enough. This is the total annihilation, laying waste to, or demoralization of an enemy. Being stripped of all pride, and dignity, being straight up destroyed and annihilated. That's what a ravage is. So Benjamin said, I'll no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages. Read.
But a worker of the Lord, distributing food unto them that work what is good.
But a worker of the Lord, distributing food to them that work what is good. A complete turnaround, right? From black ops to soup kitchens, right? Is what Benjamin is talking about here. Right? It says, I shall no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages. So now we see a level of characterization as to who the children of Benjamin were, not only in the scriptures, but who they were in the land of Israel. The tribe, this particular tribe, was known for their warlike tendencies. This was what you would call a bloodthirsty tribe. A bloodthirsty tribe, right? Much like a pack of ravening wolves persist in attacking and attacking their prey and rent and tearing it to shreds to the point to where their victim can no longer be recognized. Right?
Everybody that's watching, I want to just let you all know that right now there's some some idiot in the YouTube chat. I'm trying to keep this information, whatever it is that's going in this chat, off. However, I have to focus. We have to focus on the left, so I don't have time to stay focused on trying to block
so those in images. The chat, report, block, so, do what you have to do on your side to make sure that's. And we're gonna continue. We're not gonna allow this situation to derail what it is that we're trying to do up here.
Yeah, right? it's a distraction, but
right?
Yeah. Anyway,
so let's come back to it. Let's come back to it.
Absolutely.
Right. So Benjamin was described as a ravening wolf. Let's put the image of the ravening wolf back up one more time, just to sort of give people an idea of what this means. When you see an animal, when you see a wolf looking at you like this, you know what's about to happen. You know what's about to go down, and you know likely there's more than one. Right? There's more than one. right? This tribe was known for its skill and valor. Their skill and valor was well recorded throughout the scriptures. Let's go to 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 1 to sort of get an idea as to the prowess of this tribe.
1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 1. Now these are they that came to David to Ziklag, while he yet kept himself close because of Saul, son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men, helpers of the war. Verse 2. They were armed with bows and could use both the right hand and the left hand, hurling stones and shooting arrows out of a bow, even of Saul's brethren of Benjamin.
So the tribe of Benjamin was known for battle, for war, right? So much so that people was wondering why it is that David was a warrior himself. He could do battle himself. But David feared Saul. For those of you who don't know who Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. He was not a small man in stature. He was known, he had the kind of height and body type to where you could see him over a crowd. He was a tall man, right? Built for battle. Led the children of Israel in battle, right? And he had what you would call secret service, right? He had other brothers from the tribe of Benjamin that worked behind him, right? They were among the mighty men and helpers of war. They could use the bow and they could use the sling, but they were ambidextrous. They could use both their right and their left hands. Why is this rare? Because at this particular time period, being ambidextrous or being left-handed wasn't common, right? And we're going to get into why this particular trait, this left-handed trait, is so important, right? There's a reason why the scriptures brought it up, and they only bring it up as it pertains to Benjamin. Of course, there are people who are left-handed from Judah, from Issachar, from Naphtali, but this particular tribe had numbers of people who were left-handed, and it plays a part in their military prowess, right? So the Benjamite warriors under King Saul, who was also exceptional in battle, were ambidextrous and were excelled in every form of weapon or battle, any form of weapon to do battle. Let's get Judges chapter 20, verse 15.
Judges chapter 20, verse 15. And the children of Benjamin were numbered at that time out of the cities 20 and 6,000 men that drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gilboa, which were numbered 700 chosen men. 700 chosen men. Now keep in mind, Benjamin is by far the smallest tribe of all of Israel at this time. They're the smallest, right? There was no numbers factor to the way that they did battle. They weren't close to the second smallest tribe. They were a very, very small tribe, right? Read. 700 chosen men, verse 16. Among all this people were 700 chosen men left-handed. They were all left-handed. Now keep in mind, notice how the scriptures make it a point to point this out. That population, they had 700 chosen men that were left-handed. Read. Everyone could sling stones at a hair's breadth and not miss. So you could take a strand of hair and hold it up, and they could take a sling, like a slingshot, with their left hand and hit it from a distance. Think of that like your best sniper today. Right? Your best shot today. Right? They could hit a hair. Verse 17. And the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men that drew the sword. All these were men of war. So keep in mind, you have to understand what's going on here. A battle is about to happen between Benjamin and the rest of the children of Israel. All the children of Israel have banded together to fight Benjamin, and Benjamin has geared up to fight them. Benjamin has 700 people, has 700 men.
out of their entire population that are chosen to do war. Israel has 400,000. 400,000. Read.
Verse 18. And the children of Israel arose and went up to the house of God and asked the counsel of God and said, which of us shall go up first to battle against the children of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first.
So they're saying they went before the Most High and said, okay, what's the strategy? Who of us should lead this battle? He says Judah should. Read.
Verse 19. And the children of Israel rose up in the morning and encamped against Gilboa. And the children of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel put themselves in array to fight against them at Gilboa. So
I don't know if any of you have ever seen the tactic that Shaka Zulu would use in surrounding, and he would come in a particular formation. He would surround and enclose, right? Almost like constricting an army. This is the same tactic that the children of Israel are planning to use on Benjamin. So they've set themselves in array in an attempt to sort of trap what little amount of Benjamin will be fighting this battle. 700 men. Check out what happens. Let's go ahead and get we're at verse 20, right? 21.
Verse 21. Verse 21. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Gilboa and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites that day 22,000 men.
The tribe of Benjamin on the first day, 700 men versus the number of Israel. They killed 22,000. 22,000 on the first day. One tribe against 12. They killed. They destroy. Now keep in mind. Notice the word that it uses. It doesn't say killed. It says they destroyed. Read that again.
Go back, verse 21. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Gilboa and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites that day 22,000 men.
They destroyed 22,000 men. Now keep in mind, these are Israelites. We've already discussed the valor of our people. We talked about the tribe of Gad. We talked about the tribe of Naphtali. We talked about the tribes of Asher and Judah and how great they were in battle. They had nothing on Benjamin. Not necessarily because Benjamin was the larger tribe or because he was the most skilled fighter. It was because he was the most ruthless. Every other tribe had rules. Benjamin had none. He would kick dirt in your eye to win. He was that kind of fighter. He had no rules, no mercy, he had no level of rules, no moral obligation as it pertains to fighting. He was going to destroy you. Read.
Verse 23. Salaki. And the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until even, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin?
Do we go back? You want us to go back and do this again? Read.
Shall I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? And the Lord said, go up against him. Verse 24.
The Most High said, go again. Read.
Verse 24. And the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went forth against them out of Gilboa the second day and destroyed down to the ground the children of Israel again, 18,000 men.
18,000 men. 4,000 shy of the first day. Read.
All these drew the sword.
So they killed. Now can notice that word destroyed again. Notice in any other battle, you see the word killed or souls, right? But as it pertains to Benjamin in war, it uses the word destroyed. That's not a mistake. That same word, that same level of intention was given when Jacob prophesied to Benjamin that he would be a ravening wolf. that Benjamin said, I shall no longer be called a ravening wolf on account of your ravages, destruction, right? To tear to shreds, right? Mm-hmm. So in this battle, Benjamin has set himself against all the rest of the children of Israel, an army of 400,000, and they only had 700 fighters. The first 2 days, they killed 4,000 men, destroyed 40,000 men of the 12 tribes of Israel. After this, it would take an interference from the Most High. That it would take an interference of the Most High on the third day that would cause for the children of Benjamin to ultimately lose this battle. Right? So Benjamin, in the end, would lose this battle and nearly become extinct. Mm-hmm. The children of Benjamin, with the interference of the Most High, was already a small tribe, but it was nearly knocked down to zero. Right? This battle nearly caused the total extinction of the tribe of Benjamin. Hence is the origin of the name Ashanti. Ashanti is a Hebrew word that means people of the smoke. T means people. Ashan means smoke. Ashanti means people of the smoke. Right? Because remember, in this battle, if you read down a couple more verses, it talks about how after the battle, smoke went up from the land of Benjamin. Therefore, hence, these people were known as the people of the smoke. Not as in people of Ashan, meaning the children of Judah's son, Ashan. There's an Ashan that's descended from Judah. Not that Ashan. This is speaking of actual smoke. It is important to note the insane, for this particular time, amount of left-handed fighters that Benjamin had. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that left-handed fighters have an advantage in combat. How many of you knew that? Left-handed fighters are better in hand-to-hand combat than right-handed fighters, which is why there's an overrepresentation of left-handed fighters in combat sports. Majority of the time, when you look at combat sports, you're looking at left-handed people. Even to a sense to where when you look at certain athletes, majority of athletes are originally left-handed but train themselves to be right-handed. For example, Ben Simmons, LeBron James, James Harden uses his left hand. Zion Williamson, all left-handed, but trained themselves to be right-handed. Right? So Benjamin, the reason why Benjamin held a certain advantage is because being left-handed is more difficult to guard. I remember I had the most issues that I had when I played sports was whether any sport where you're dealing with a left-handed hitter, right? Or you're dealing with a left-handed pitcher, a lefty pitcher, or a lefty shooter, or a lefty quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's more difficult to deal with because usually you're trying to block with your right hand when they're shooting with their left. It's more difficult to defend. It's more difficult to defend. Judges chapter 3, verse 15.
Judges chapter 3, verse 15. But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised up a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Jira.
Ehud, the son of Jira, read.
A Benjamite, and left-handed.
He was left-handed, a man left-handed. Read.
And by him, the children of Israel sent a present unto children of Israel sent a present unto Eglon, the king of Moab.
So notice how as it pertains to Benjamin, they point out the fact that they're left-handed, that the men are left-handed. Mm-hmm. This is their advantage in combat. Think about if you're trying to do combat with somebody, you have your sword in your right hand and your shield in the other, right? They have their sword in their left hand and their shield in their right. It's easier for them to block you. If you're swinging with your right hand and they're blocking with their right arm, what's open? Your torso's open. Right? There's a level of advantage. There's a level of advantage there. Right? So another thing to keep into consideration when we talk about the tribe of Benjamin, another thing that's important to remember is their relationship between Joseph and Benjamin. Why is this important? Joseph and Benjamin are both sons of Rachel, right? They were separated. And throughout the Old Testament, you see that there's a particular connection between Ephraim and Benjamin, right? Benjamin and Ephraim are usually always on the same side of every battle. This particular instance that we saw in the Judges was a rare instance in which they were pitted against one another. So Joseph and Benjamin having a close and loving relationship to his little brother, we see throughout the history of the Old Testament, even after the split of Benjamin and Judah, that where Benjamin would ultimately side with Judah, these two were always found close together. Similarly, as to the way we find Simeon and Levi close together, we will find Ephraim and Benjamin close together. It's possible that we could find them close together once again. So, to identify the tribe of Benjamin, we must find these things. 1, the curses. 2, they're fierce and ruthless warriors. 5, they're known for piracy. They're known for piracy. Why do I say they're known for piracy? Genesis chapter 49, verse 27 says, in the morning they shall devour the prey, and at night they shall divide the spoil. Right? Meaning they attack and they destroy one day, and then they pillage and plunder and divide it amongst themselves. That's piracy. Right? Number 4, close to Ephraim. And number 5, they're wild and untamed like a wolf. They have the behavior or the actions of a wolf. Untamed and wild like a wolf. Con? So we're gonna do a quick 5-minute break. And then we're going to get into the second half of identifying the tribe of Benjamin, right? The tribe of Benjamin, particularly as it pertains to the scriptures. Now that we have a good idea as to who Benjamin was character-wise, we can now begin to get into who he is today, how that translates to today. Con, we'll be right back. All right, we are back. We are back. We are back. Salakia, everybody. You know, the devil is busy, but we're gonna press through this thing. All right. So, sort of to go back over a little bit, because we sort of rushed through that back part a little bit, but the character of Benjamin, right? Think of Benjamin as a wolf. Right. Think of the two as synonymous. The same attributes that a wolf has are the same ones that are the same sort of values that Benjamin has in his character. Right. So going forward, in our previous lessons on Judah and Levi, we discovered that three Southern Kingdom tribes fled into Africa in 70 AD. Right. So this is why I call the lesson on the tribe of Benjamin somewhat of a continuation. And the reason why I call it that is because it follows from the lessons on the tribes of Levi and Benjamin, and the lessons of Levi and Judah, but it also follows up Manasseh and Ephraim in a lot of ways as well. So the evidence that we have of the Jews in 70 AD fleeing from the Middle East, fleeing from Israel into Africa is already well recorded. Benjamin was one of those three Southern Kingdom tribes that was conquered in 70 AD. How do we know? Paul the Apostle was a Benjamite. So Benjamin's behaviors, his journey and his behaviors within Africa make him distinct from the other Southern Kingdom tribes. The way he behaves differently than the other two tribes. The Benjamites in Africa would be more warlike and rebellious to rule than the other two tribes. They're uncomfortable with dictatorship. They're more likely to rebut against what many would refer to as their masters. Right? And they would be conquered much earlier on than their Judean and Levite counterparts. So the Benjamites were targeted by Europeans before the tribes of Judah and Levi were in Africa. Let's get the Critical Review or the Annals of Literature, volume 57.
The Critical Review or Annals of Literature, volume 57, page 142. Mm-hmm. He also deserved well of the commerce of America by procuring by his remonstrances that the Negro slaves who before, like all the other necessaries, had been sent from Seville or other Spanish harbors, were to be directly transported from Guinea to the West Indies, and that, of course, America was more expeditiously furnished with the laborers wanted. Las Casas proposal was executed in 1517.
Okay, so this is 100 years prior to the transatlantic slave trade. The Africans within Guinea were transported to the West Indies in order to replenish the already diminishing tribes that were in the West Indies at the time. We went over that last week in Manasseh and Ephraim. How the Taino Indians were nearly completely depopulated, and they were replenished with what we're seeing here are Africans from Guinea being sent to the West Indies by the Spaniards. Read.
1517. The Court of Trade at Seville appointed 4,000 Negroes to be annually transported to the islands of Domingo.
Domingo, which is Domingo is Hispaniola. Read.
Domingo Fernandina,
which is off the coast of the western parts of the South America. Read.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, which we now know is where Ephraim dwells. Read.
And Jamaica.
And Jamaica, which is where Manasseh used to dwell. There were some of Manasseh left over in Jamaica when the African slaves were brought there. So the first batch of slaves that were taken from Africa to the Western Hemisphere, meaning the first time Africans endured organized trade. Right? This is organized trade to the Western Hemisphere. These Africans were from Guinea. These slaves were sent to the West Indies, namely Puerto Rico and Jamaica. These are the two that we want to focus on. So we discovered in the previous lesson that the natives previously inhabited these particular islands were Ephraim and Manasseh. These are the slaves that we want to examine and figure out whether or not they are from the tribe of Benjamin. We want to focus on Guinea. Why? Because in the lessons on Levi and Judah, we already established who in Africa is Levi and Judah. Guinea was not included amongst those Judite or Levite tribes. So who are they? Right? Because remember, we already discovered that in 70 AD, the three tribes of the Southern Kingdom fled into Africa. See the lesson on the tribe of Judah, see the lesson on the tribe of Simeon and Levi. We know that the Southern Kingdom fled into Africa. So Benjamin is present in Africa. That's what we do know. That's what we already know. But are these people from the tribe of Benjamin? So being that these African slaves were sent from Guinea to the West Indies, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Ferdinanda, and the island of Hispaniola, we can now begin to determine whether their characteristics, whether the curses, the characteristics line up with what we found out about Benjamin in the first part of this lesson. Right? So what we're going to do is begin examining the slaves in Jamaica and work our way back to tracing them throughout Africa, the water. So let's get Jamaican Maroons on Wikipedia.
Jamaican Maroons. The word maroon is derived via French from the Spanish word cimarron, meaning wild or untamed. This word usually refers to runaways, castaways, or the shipwrecked.
It means what?
Wild or untamed.
It means what?
Wild or untamed.
Isn't that the characteristics that was attributed to Benjamin?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the exact characteristics that was attributed to Benjamin? That he would be a ravening wolf? A ravening wolf is wild, untamed, right? Undisciplined. Right? So now we already see that the characteristic that was attributed to Benjamin is being applied to the Jamaican Maroons. Go ahead and start from the beginning and read that again. Tawada.
The word maroon is derived via French from the Spanish word cimarron, meaning wild or untamed. This word usually refers to runaways, castaways, or the shipwrecked. Mm-hmm. Those marooned probably would never return. Mm-hmm. The origin of the Spanish word maroon is unknown.
The origin of the Spanish word maroon is unknown. So the name maroon that was given to these African slaves meant wild or untamed. This is exactly how Jacob refers to his son Benjamin, as a ravening wolf. Right? And this is how Benjamin continues to be described throughout the Old Testament, as a ravening wolf, untamed, wild. Right? He doesn't want to win. He wants to annihilate. He wants to destroy. He wants to demoralize. Right? Now, what many don't know is there's a difference between dreadlocks and locks. How many of you knew that? There's a difference between dreadlocks and locks. Dreadlocks is the untamed growth of one's hair resulting in a rope-like result. Right? It's untamed. They don't comb it, right? They don't do anything to it. They don't do the parts. No, none of that. It just grows. Right? Jamaicans refer to dreadlocks as a lifestyle, whereas locks are a hairstyle. What I have in my head, these are locks. This is a hairstyle. What you see from most Benjamites is a lifestyle. They just allow it to grow. That's why you have locks some are really big, some are really small. There's no part lines in them. They don't really do anything to them. Mm-hmm. It's the untamed and wild growth of their hair. Right? This iconic hairstyle has been somewhat trademarked by Jamaican people, by Jamaican people, and it matches their character perfectly. It's to the point to where when black people in America want to start to get locks, we ask Jamaicans for permission to get them. Now, obviously, black people weren't doing it the same way that they were. We were doing the parts and everything like that. We had it clean. It's not the exact same thing, but there was a level of trademark that was attributed to this being a Jamaican hairstyle, to the point to where even now, if people see you with locks, they assume that you're Jamaican. Oh, I thought you were Jamaican. I get it all the time. I'm from the tribe of Judah. I'm not Jamaican. But a lot of people ask me that question because of my hair, right? The wild, untamed growth of hair. The wild, untamed growth of hair is a dreadlock, which describes, which is a hairstyle that Benjamin would have, right? Let's get back to Jamaican Maroons.
Jamaican Maroons, Wikipedia.com. Jamaican Maroons descended from the Africans who freed themselves from slavery on the colony of Jamaica and established communities of free black people in Jamaica in the mountains interior.
So Jamaican Maroons. Now that we know that the name Maroon means wild or untamed, these untamed Jamaican people freed themselves from slavery in Jamaica. Right? Read from there.
Freed themselves
established
from slavery.
communities.
Established communities of free black people in Jamaica in the mountains interior, primarily in the eastern parishes. Africans who were enslaved during Spanish rule over Jamaica in 1493 to 1656 may have been the first to develop such refugee communities.
So there's a difference. There's a clear difference between the Jamaican Maroons of the Spanish Inquisition versus the Jamaican Maroons of the British Inquisition. The Jamaican Maroons of the Spanish Inquisition are majority Ashanti or Akan, whereas the Jamaicans of the British Inquisition are more so Igbo. Right? So there's a difference between the two. Now, what we're going to find is that ultimately the Igbo and the Akan are the same people. They have the same stock. But there's a difference in dispersion time. Right? So the Maroons in particular were Akan speaking people. They were not Igbo. Right? So when talking about Manasseh in a previous lesson, we found that they would flee inland from their captors into the mountains. The Jamaicans did the same. They also fled into the mountains, but they did so with Taino, if that makes sense. It will. Let's get Jamaican Maroons. Drop down a paragraph.
Jamaican Maroons. When the English invaded Jamaica in 1655, most Spanish colonists fled.
This is the beginning of the British Inquisition in Jamaica. Read.
Many of their slaves escaped, and together with free blacks and mulattoes, former slaves, and some native Taino.
So there were remaining Taino. There were remaining from the tribe of Manasseh that were present in Jamaica. And these Jamaicans would flee into the mountains with the help of the Taino. Why did they need the help of the Taino? Because the Taino knew the land. They knew the terrain. So they would be guided into the mountains by the Taino, and they would develop Maroon communities there. These communities, the Maroon communities, exist until this day. In fact, the Jamaican Maroons in Jamaica today are actually ready to go to war with the Jamaican government over independence. So yeah, it's about to go down again. Right? So the Jamaican Maroons, the Jamaican Maroons freed themselves from slavery. How did they free themselves from slavery? We're going to get into that. The Jamaican Maroons were known for being some of the biggest troublemakers to the Europeans in the West Hemisphere. The Maroons today, even the Maroons today, and those are the Maroons that still remain in Africa, still give Europeans the most trouble. Why? Because they're untamed, they're wild, right? not only did they continuously revolt against Spanish and British rule with some success, but they also managed to force out the Spanish and to terrorize the British forces, resulting in their deportation to Canada, most notably Halifax and Nova Scotia. So they caused so much trouble in Jamaica after being sent there that the British got them deported. They deported them to Canada. Let's get that. Jamaican Maroons in Nova Scotia by John N. Grant.
Jamaican Maroons in Nova Scotia. The Maroons fought to maintain their freedom in Jamaica, where they had established several independent communities as early as mid-1600s.
Several independent communities. So think of this as the Civil War in the U.S. on crack. Read.
In 1738 through 1730, after 84 years of almost continuous warfare, the first series of Maroon Wars ended as a peace treaty was negotiated with the British. In peace, in a seeming paradox, the Maroons proved allies of the English planters, acting as slave catchers and willing volunteers in the suppression of the occasional slave rebellion.
So they began to work for the European. This was the only way that for temporarily they could quell the revolts and the rebellions that the Jamaican Maroons were giving them. Read.
Occasional slave rebellion. Claiming that the terms of the treaty were not fully met, the government of Jamaica determined to exile the Trelawney Maroons. By happenstance, the British Navy had a number of largely empty transport ships under convoy protection due to the leave Jamaica. Jamaican authorities had discussed various destinations for the exiled Trelawney Maroons, but the closest British port the transport fleet would pass was Halifax.
Halifax, yep.
Halifax, the 47-year-old capital of the colony of Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
Right?
So they said, okay, we need to figure out how to get rid of these people. They're causing us too much trouble. Now the question is, where are we going to send these people? Nobody wants them. Nobody wants these problems that we have. So it just so happens that we have a ship that's going to be leaving for Halifax soon. Let's just throw them all on there. Let's just throw them all on there and get them out of here. So they sent them to Nova Scotia in Canada. Read.
Accordingly, without consultation with Governor Sir John Wentworth or his government, Council of 12, they decided that Halifax would be at least a temporary destination of the Maroons.
It would be a temporary destination of the Maroons. So they said, listen, we haven't had a conversation with the government there. We're just really trying to get these people off our hands. So let's just send them there and we'll handle what happens afterward later on. Read.
Additional houses were built. A schoolmaster and a clergyman employed provisions were provided. And the Maroons were expected to become peaceful farmers in acknowledgement of the Maroons' military reputation. And because
go back, because this is important. It says additional houses were built, a schoolmaster and clergymen were employed. Read.
Provisions were provided, and the Maroons were expected to become peaceful farmers.
They were expected to become peaceful farmers. Now, what you're going to find is that they're expecting these people to become peaceful farmers in a land that they don't want to be in. They don't want to be here. So how peaceful do you believe the Benjamites are going to be? They didn't want to be in Jamaica. And look at all the problems that they gave the British. They expected them to become peaceful farmers, but instead, what did they do?
In acknowledgement of the Maroons' military reputation,
they said, okay, they're great farmers, but if they were giving the government in Jamaica this much trouble for years without any real modern weaponry or military training, look at their reputation. Let's use it.
Yeah.
So it says, an acknowledgement of the Maroons' military reputation, read.
And because the government feared a French invasion,
Mm-hmm.
the Maroons were organized into a militia company.
They use them for their military.
So,
Now, keep in mind, what we're going to find later in this lesson is that they knew who the Benjamites were. Before they brought these people to Jamaica, before they sent them to Halifax, they knew who they were picking up. So they were familiar with their war, with their abilities in war and in battle. They already knew. Read.
were organized into a militia company.
Mm-hmm.
Their officers were among the leaders of the 1795 rebellion in Jamaica, and all were battle hardened.
All were battle hardened. All of them knew how to do battle. Now, keep in mind, this same Maroon militia company was also the one that helped win World War I. So this group of Maroons played a big part in the victory of World War I. Some may ask, how is that possible? Such a small group of people. Remember what the Benjamites did with only 700 people to a 400,000 army of some of the greatest warriors on the planet. Keep in mind, the children of Israel were at the time the greatest military presence on earth. Benjamin only had 700 against 400,000, and they gave them hell for 2 days until the Most High stepped in. It took the Most High to down the tribe of Benjamin. So you may ask, how is it that a small militia within the British military can play a big role in winning World War I? That's because this is the tribe of Benjamin, people. They don't need many. They just need the proud, ruthless few. Khan? So, disputes arose. Let's get disputes arose.
Disputes arose within the Maroon community at Preston, or Maroon Town, as it was also called.
Mm-hmm.
The majority wanted to leave Nova Scotia and return to Jamaica.
So they hated it. They hated it in Nova Scotia. They said, listen, no, this ain't what you brought us from Africa. It was hot and tropical. You take us to Jamaica where it's hot and tropical. And now you're sending me to the frozen tundra. Read.
Majority wanted to leave Nova Scotia and return to Jamaica, but that was not allowed by the island government.
Jamaica said, we don't want them back. They're not coming back here. Not here. We finally got some semblance of peace. We don't want them back. Leave them out. The Maroons said, hey, we can come back. They said, nope. Stay where you at. Read.
Not allowed by the island government. Otherwise, they were willing to go anywhere that was warmer.
They said, listen, we don't care where we go as long as it's warmer than here. Read.
They petitioned the government in April 1798, saying that the maroon cannot exist where the pineapple is not.
It says the maroon cannot exist where the pineapple is not. It was like, this is the kind of terrain that we try to live in. Listen, if it ain't no pineapple there, we ain't trying to go. Listen, if a pineapple grow there, that mean that it's good enough for us. That mean it don't get cold. They said, listen, we don't want none of this cold weather. We finished with this. This right here ain't it. They said the maroon cannot exist where the pineapple is not. Read.
Finally, on 7th of August, 1800, 551 Maroon men, women, and children sailed out of Halifax Harbor on board the HMS Asia, bound for Freetown, Sierra Leone, in West Africa.
So we have a body in Freetown, Sierra Leone.
They arrived safely on the 30th of September, 1800, and volunteered to support the government against the 1792 Black Loyalist settlers who had rebelled. In Freetown, they perpetuated the memory of Jamaica by the creation of Trelawney Street. And oral history maintains that some of their descendants squared the circle by the mid-1800s and returned to the unforgotten island homeland.
So, virtually, after only 4 years of being in Nova Scotia, they had enough, and they forced their way out, ultimately resulting in them going into what is now today Freetown, Sierra Leone, where we have a church. We have a church in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I spoke a while ago when we were putting together the lesson on the tribe of Judah concerning Sierra Leone and a Benjamite presence within Sierra Leone. The group of the Creole within the Creole within Sierra Leone are the Maroons, right? The population within Sierra Leone, the native population within Sierra Leone was Judah. But the Trelawney that were introduced, the Maroons that were introduced years later were Benjamite, right? So there's now a large Benjamite presence within Sierra Leone that wasn't originally there, right? But in the mid-1800s, when slavery was abolished within Jamaica, many returned back to Jamaica, right? So that's about maybe a 50 or 60 year difference, right? So you're looking at a child that may have remembered what it was like growing up in Jamaica before being deported to Halifax and ultimately being sent to Sierra Leone. So at this point, now it's important to note that the governments established within the Maroon colonies were fashioned after the Ashanti in Ghana, right? Many of them spoke some version of it, spoke some Akan language at this particular time. Remember, there's two separate sections of slavery within the West Indies. You have 1517, and then you have, which is under the Spanish Inquisition, and you have the 1700s, which is under the British Inquisition. The British brought Igbo because of slave labor. The Igbo were the best workers. So the British brought in Igbo. The natives that they originally took from, that the Spanish originally took from, were from Guinea. Guinea has Akan-speaking people. Akan-speaking people come from areas like Ivory Coast and Ghana, some areas within Nigeria. Good. Right? So, let's see what we got here. Let's go back. Let's go back up. We're going to go to go back up to Jamaican Maroons, descended from Africans. Right here. We have an image of a Jamaican Maroon, spear Maroon.
Jamaican Maroons. Jamaican Maroons descended from Africans who freed slaves themselves from slavery on the colony of Jamaica and established communities of free Black people in Jamaica and the mountains interior.
The man that you see here on your screen, Parkinson, was one of the leaders of the Maroon militias. He was one of the ones who pioneered and led the Maroons to a lot of the victories that they had. They were also led by a woman named Queen Nanny. She's one of the only women to be recognized as one of the Jamaican national heroes. She led the Maroons as well to many victories. She also pioneered the first. She also invented within Jamaica camouflage warfare. You know how it is when people put bushes on themselves and they hide and then they jump out. Yeah, Queen Nanny was the one who pioneered that form of warfare. She was a master of guerrilla warfare, showing you that our sisters know what to do as well. The sisters knew how to get down as well, right? Now, down to the English invaded Jamaica in 1655, we have Rifle Maroon. Go ahead and read. Go ahead.
Jamaican Maroons.
Yeah. When
Jamaican
English.
Maroons. When English invaded Jamaica in 1655,
Mm-hmm.
most Spanish colonists fled.
Mm-hmm.
Many of their slaves escaped, and together with free blacks and mulattoes, former slaves, and some native Taino, coalesced into a number of ethnically diverse groups in the Jamaican interior.
So imagine the Spanish running off while the British are coming. The British watching the Spanish leave, like, what's going on? They're like, listen, don't go.
Yeah.
Go if you dare. You don't know what we went through with these people. The British say, I think we can handle this. Smith say, hey,
You got it.
do you, bruh? We don't want it no more. You know what? The Spanish said the same thing. The Spanish said the same thing about the Western world with the Gadites, with the Native Americans. Why do you think that they gave up all of that land, all of the Western United States, to the U.S. and the Louisiana Purchase for virtually nothing? It was like, listen, I can't do nothing with it anyway. If we try to colonize it, the Comanche would come and take everybody out. I tell you what, the Spanish was having a hard time. Between not being able to do anything with the land that they had in the U.S. to not being able to do anything with the land that they had in Jamaica, they were having a real rough time. I'm pretty sure they just quit on trying to enslave Israelites. It was like, you know what, we're gonna take our hat out of the ring on this one. We ain't having too much success, right? So we see the Maroons come from Guinea. Right, they transported them from Guinea according to the annals of literature, and they're meant to be used as slaves to replenish the slave population that they lost among the indigenous. These Maroons began to fight back, freeing themselves from slavery, and establish Maroon communities. After establishing Maroon communities, they continued to pillage and pirate, causing them to be deported to Canada. After being deported to Canada, they realized we hate this cold weather, just send us somewhere warm. They forced their way out of Canada to Sierra Leone and eventually worked their way back to Jamaica.
For the pineapple.
I tell you what, for the pineapple. Like, listen.
Pineapple seed.
Like, listen, we got to go somewhere. We can't be, Maroons can't live where the pineapple is not. If the pineapple don't grow there, I don't need to be around now. If I can't sweat in all 4 seasons, I don't need to be in this area. Right? Let's now another particular thing that we noticed concerning the tribe of Benjamin. Not only were they ruthless warriors, but they were also known for piracy. Maroons are known for their battles on land, but what they're not as known for is their pirating of the seas. Let's get slave ship mutinies from slaveryandremembrance.org. Slave ship mutinies.
Slave ship mutinies. Shipboard resistance ranged from an individual act of defiance, an isolated act of violence, or a normal fatal attempt to leap overboard, to major revolts, which descended into a life and death struggle between Africans and sailors. For example, the enslaved people aboard the Clare mutinied and successfully drove the crew from the vessel, landing and liberating themselves near Cape Coast Castle of the Gold Coast in 1729.
So these particular slaves at this time were being taken from the Gold Coast, meaning what? The Gold Coast is this is the British slavery. Now we're looking at majority of Igbo slaves, right? So these slaves that are being taken from the Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, and Ghana, these slaves were revolting. If you see the image on your screen, that's exactly what you're seeing. You see all of those slaves in that uprising, tossing Europeans overboard? These brothers and sisters were not having it. They're like, listen, and this is the difference between the Benjamites, the Benjamin, Judah, and Levi. Judah fought back. Judah wasn't as Levi fought back. Levi wasn't as willing to die. When you look at slave ship records coming from areas where the Benjamites were, where those who were sent to the West Indies were, not only did they rebel, but if they weren't successful, they would die before being taken the rest of the way. That's the difference between Benjamin, Judah, and Levi. Benjamin said, by any means necessary. Sound familiar? Guinea in the Igbo said, by any means necessary. I'm not going. So if I can't take this ship, if I can't turn this thing around, I'm going overboard. I'll take my chances in the ocean. That's the difference between Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Judah would lose and still go. Levi would lose and still go. Benjamin, they would toss themselves overboard. They were not going. Go ahead and read that last part again. For example,
the enslaved people aboard the Clare mutinied and successfully drove the crew off from the vessel, landing and liberating themselves near Cape Coast Castle on the Gold Coast in 1729.
They liberated them. Now, keep in mind, it was important, and the natives knew that it was important, that if they were going to revolt, they did it close to the coast. If they got too far into sea, it would be more difficult for them to mutiny, for them to get back to land, right? They could, if you toss yourself overboard when you're already at sea, chances are you're likely to die. But if you can get overboard and you're closer to the coast, you have a chance, right? So a lot of these mutinies that happen either happened before they got on the ship or when they were just getting off the coast. The Africans being brought to the West Indies caused some of the most issues by enslavers, and they often revolted and sometimes succeeded in taking the vessels and using the same vessels that they overturned. Go ahead and put up that slave ship one more time, the same one that we just had up earlier. They would take this ship, turn it around, take it back to the coast, drop the slaves off, and use it to pirate other ships. So they would then go and overturn other ships, free the slaves, and then go do it again.
Crazy.
Sound familiar? Devour the prey, divide the spoil. Let's get Jamaica in slaveryandremembrance.org. What does it say about pirating at its height? Read.
Jamaica. Under early English control, Jamaica became a haven for pirates who harassed Spanish shipping.
They were causing. This is why they got
crazy.
This is why they got deported. The British were like, "Listen, we had a deal." The Spanish was like, "Listen, we made a treaty. We had a deal. You were supposed to leave us alone." The Jamaicans said, "You know what? I mean, we're kind of impoverished up here. Y'all bringing all them goods and victuals in and out of them slave ports, in and out of them trade ports. What's one ship? What's one ship? One ship turned to two ships. Two ships turned to three ships. And then they were dominating the Caribbean." We have an image of a slave ship that was plundered and abandoned. This is one of the ships that they plundered and left. They would get on these ships, they would mutiny, they would overturn them, and then use them as pirates. How many of you know that 30% of all pirates were of West Indian stock? They were Jamaican Maroons. These people, they knew they were gifted in battle over sea, and they were gifted in battle on lands. Go ahead and continue. As was the case.
As was the case elsewhere in Caribbean Jamaica, planters began to cultivate sugar in the later half of the 17th century.
Mm-hmm.
The plantation system relied on enslaved labor,
Mm-hmm.
and the island imported almost 1 million captive Africans in total.
They captured almost 1 million capture Africans in total. Read. So this is the plantation system that we have. Now remember, what was one of the requirements when we're looking at the tribe of Benjamin? They have to display the curses. They suffered the same form of slavery that blacks suffered in America. They were brought to the West Indies on slave ships. They were then enslaved on plantations. A lot of the same segregation and slave plantations that took place in the U.S. took place also in the West Indies. The difference is that revolts were happening more often in Jamaica, to the point to where slave owners in the U.S. were afraid that the slaves in the Americas would find out and begin to do the same thing. They feared that the Maroons would have a mental effect on the tribe of Judah in the U.S. They said if these people find out that not only is there freedom in what they're doing, these people are pirates, they're free, but they also are having success against the European government, which currently is running the earth. How many of you know that the ratio of owner to slave is not equal? You were talking about one European for every 10 slaves. So let some slaves in America find out. Now keep in mind the brothers and sisters from Guinea, the Akan people, and the Igbo were not built like the Mandinka. They weren't built like Judah. So you can look at the Benjamites within Africa, and they can say, well, they're difficult to deal with because they're ruthless. Right? They're wiry, they're kind of skinny, not but they're an issue. Now you have the Mandinka from the tribe of Judah that were known for being large. The term Mandingo, it comes from the Mandinka tribe. Mandingo refers to what many call today a big black man. That's where that term came from. So you have these Mandinka and Angolan people in the United States saying, hey, they're in the island. These people they causing some. I heard that they're causing trouble over there in Jamaica. And they're much less. We got more people than they do. Hold up. We might be able to do something. Oh man, it would have been a problem. It would have been a problem. And then let those Mandinka in the US find out that they can find freedom as pirates. See, the British had a lot of work to do. They had to continue to make sure that there was a line that separated Judah from Benjamin from Levi. Because keep in mind, the brothers and sisters in Jamaica didn't know about the slave revolts that were happening in Haiti until much later. So the tribe of Levi in Haiti, the tribe of Benjamin in Jamaica, and the tribe of Judah in the Americas had no idea about each other's rebellions. So if the British had allowed for there to be some level of communication between the three, now you have a certain level of organized attack that the British cannot handle. So their mission was to make sure that word of these victories, that word of these black pirates stayed where they're at. Notice that the British did not want to send the Maroons to America. Notice they didn't want to send them to the colonies. Why do you think that is? They can't send Jamaican Maroons amongst their peaceful slaves in the Americas. Mix some Maroon with Mandinka and see what's going to happen. In fact, you're seeing it right now. The children of Israel are waking up and they're uniting. The tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the southern kingdom, has already risen. We're awakening. The scripture said that he shall raise up the tents of Judah first. So the same thing that they feared and tried to prevent in the times of slavery, the same thing that they've been trying to prevent since then is happening now. Right? It's a dangerous thing. Mutiny on Slave Ships by Lorenzo Green.
Mutiny on Slave Ships by Lorenzo Green. In 1764, a ship called Adventure lay an anchor off the coast of Africa. Africans attacked the ship, killed the crew, and liberated the captives.
So they on this particular, they raided the ship, killed all the crew, and liberated the slaves. Read. This is March 17th. March 1742.
In March 1742, slavers aboard the Jolly Bachelor were loading captives onto a ship in Sierra Leone River. Africans attacked. Captain Cutler and two of his crew were killed. The Africans stripped the ship of its rigging and sails, liberated the captives in the hold, and abandoned the ship. This was a successful attack. However, we should note that rescues and uprisings were more successful if they occurred right away on the coast. Just like I said earlier, it's easier to fight a battle. It's easier to fight a battle on land than it is to fight one on sea, especially if you have to do something rash like jumping overboard. But notice what these Africans did. They attacked and killed all but two crew members, but look at what they did afterwards. Read that again. The Africans stripped. The Africans stripped the ship of its rigging and sails, liberated the captives in the hold, and abandoned the ship. Go ahead and put the abandoned slave ship back up there again. That's what happened. Thank you. They devoured the prey. They devoured the prey, and then they divided the spoils. They took everything useful off the ship and left it. Like, yeah, we don't have use for that no more. Sound familiar? Sounds like Benjamin, doesn't it? They tore the ship down to the bones. All this thing could do was float. They took the rails, they took the sails. Listen, the two crew members that were left weren't going nowhere. Let's get the next one. In June
1730, yep.
In June 1730, Captain George Scott sailed from the Guinea coast with a cargo of 92 slaves aboard the ship Little George. 6 days out of the sea, the slaves revolted. They broke into the bulkhead of the ship and onto the deck. The crew retreated to the cabin and tried to make a bomb or gunpowder in a bottle. The bomb went off, and the explosion nearly destroyed the ship. The captain and some of the crew remained imprisoned in the cabin for several days, while the several steered in the ship back in the coast of Africa.
So these slaves revolted. 96 slaves revolted
and successfully escaped when they came within the sight of the coast.
These, in an attempt to fight back against the slaves, the crew blew themselves up. And the rest of the crew was locked up where the slaves were previously locked up. The slaves got together. Now, keep in mind, this is the Guinea coast. The slaves got together and said, all right, let's figure out how to steer this thing. Turned it around and made it all the way back to the coast of Africa, made it all the way back home.
Crazy.
December 1753. Go ahead and get that.
In December 1753, the Captain Bear was loading captives into his ship at Coast Castle in the West Africa. The slaves rebelled and killed the captain and all the crew except for two. These two crewmen escaped by leaping overboard to escape and swimming ashore. This uprising seems to have been successful, and we only know about it from the two crew members who jumped overboard. Elizabeth Donan, documents illustrators of the history of the slave trade to America, volume 3, pages 82, 83. In 1765, nearly the entire crew of a ship from Bristol,
Rhode Island,
was killed in a slave uprising of the coast of Africa. The lone survivor was a Mr. Dunfield, who was out in a small boat when an uprising occurred, and it was only from him that the incident is known.
So for the first slave rebellion, the two jumped overboard, and the only reason why they know that this uprising happened is because two of them escaped. Two of them got away, and the second one. The lone survivor. This dude, he saw this brother was out of there quick.
Saw him coming.
He wasn't coming away. He like, listen. He saw that first person come through the door and he was overboard. He like, listen, it's over. It's over. Right? It was like he got on that boat quick. He was like, listen, nah. These people. I heard about what happened before. Let me just listen. Listen, I know what happened to crew. I know what happens to crew if you stick around a little bit too long. Hey, he wasn't even gonna try to. He like, listen, ain't no last stand, ain't no nothing. Yeah. We ain't
hear the story.
Listen, exactly live to tell the story. Although all the tribes revolted in some shape or form against slavery, it was the Benjamites who had the most success. And in their failures, they preferred to commit suicide rather than finish the journey. They would later use They would later use these same ships to capture and plunder other ships. This is why we find a large population of Judah in the Bahamas. Why? Because the pirates of the Caribbean, the Jamaican Maroons who were capturing these ships, were capturing other slave ships. And when they would find that there were slaves on these ships, they would take the slaves, drop them off in the Bahamas, and keep the other ship. It was all right, so we got the ship, but there's people here. The Benjamites were a problem for the Europeans. Now you see why they got deported so many times. Like, listen, I don't want to live. We got to listen. Where you want to send them? I know where we can't send them. Right? This continued. Right? These forms of piracy continue in Africa today. In Africa, you see, namely in the Niger Delta. How many of you know about the Niger Delta in Nigeria? The Niger Delta has more pirates than any place on earth. Has more pirates than any place on earth. The Niger Delta is home to 40 ethnic groups, and almost half are Benjamite. Wow. See, the U.S. had to come together with the rest of the world because they said, listen, this is one of our main trading areas. The Gold Coast is one of our main trading areas to this day. They said, if we keep allowing these people to pirate, we won't be able to trade here. So not only were the Maroons a problem for the Europeans back in the 15 to the 1700s, they're a problem now. Y'all seen the movie with Tom Hanks? What's that movie with Tom Hanks where not Castaway, the one Captain Phillip. Captain Phillip. Where the Africans boarded his ship. You know that I'm the captain now. That meme. Y'all know about that. Everybody know about the I'm the captain now meme. Right? Those were Benjamites. Those are Benjamites. Right? To get a complete scope of the identity and culture of the West Africans that are scattered throughout the West Indies, we must trace them back to their original homes in sub-Saharan Africa. Right? So now we've identified the Jamaican Maroons, and the prophecies line up perfectly as it pertains to Benjamin and the Jamaicans that were brought to the West Indies from the Gold Coast, from Guinea. Right? So it lines up perfectly. Two line up perfectly. It's not too much to dispute as far as that's concerned. But now, in order to have an idea as to where they are spread, where they're spread throughout Africa, we have to trace their roots even further back. Let's get the Igbo people, transatlantic slave trade.
Igbo people. It is alleged that European slave traders were fairly well informed about various African ethnicities.
Read that again.
It is alleged that European slave traders were fairly well informed about various African ethnicities.
So no more of this. They went in just grabbing random people. They knew exactly who they were going in to get. It is alleged that European slave traders were fairly well informed about the various African ethnicities. They knew the tribes and they knew who they belonged to. Read.
Well informed about various African ethnicities, leading to slavers targeting certain ethnic groups with plantation owners preferred.
So many people would ask and say this: how do you know that this tribe went here versus this tribe not going here? This is how we know. This is how we know. Because they knew. They knew about the African ethnicities, but they not only knew about the African ethnicities, they also knew which ethnicities would work better on certain plantations. They said, nah, Levi won't do good, and they won't do good in North America. Send them to Hispaniola to do sugarcane. He said, nah, Jamaica, they won't do good. They won't do good picking cotton. And send them to do sugarcane and tobacco. Send them to the more tropical areas. The Mandinka, nah, don't. We're gonna need to keep them malnourished. Send them to North America. Send them to North America. They knew what plantations fit certain tribes the best. So no more of that. It was random. Listen, how many of you know Europeans always have a plan? They write everything down and they always have a plan. It comes down to it's this, and you know what? It's the same exact thing in sports. You know how general managers talk about chemistry? Oh, he won't fit in this organization. He won't fit in that organization. Oh, he doesn't like cold. He's not a cold weather quarterback. He needs to be in warm weather. They do the exact same thing. Right? And brothers and sisters, we want to apologize again for the inconsistent stream today. It's kind of dealing, like we said earlier, we're dealing with a new streaming platform, and we're starting to get the hang of it a little bit. But the water for hanging in there with us. the water. All right. So let's get the next part of that. Particular desired
ethnic groups consequently became fairly concentrated in certain parts of the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
The Igbo were dispersed to colonies such as Jamaica, Cuba, Santo Domingo,
Mm-hmm.
Barbados, Colonial America, Belize, and Trinidad and Tobago, among others.
So they said, you know what? The Igbo, they won't do well on the plantations in North America. They won't do that well here. That's why only 13% of the entire slave population within North America was Igbo. Even less were of Akan descent. They were not bringing Benjamites to North America. Of course, there were some, but the vast majority were sent either to the islands in the Caribbean or to Europe. So the Igbo were by far, they're the number one. The Igbo are the number one. As a matter of fact, we're going to hold off on that. We're going to hold off on that. So not only did Europeans know what tribes were who when they transported them to the lands in which they would be enslaved, they also knew where they would be the most productive. The Igbo had the highest importation number to the West Indies. However, they are not the most widely dispersed. I'm going to say that again. They are the number one they have the highest number of imported slaves to the West Indies, but they are not the most dispersed. You can find majority of Igbos within the West Indies in 2 places in Jamaica. 2. Whereas the Ashanti and the Ghanaian and Ivory Coast slaves are spread throughout the West Indies. So the Akan people are more spread out, but the Igbo are technically the highest populace, if that makes sense. Let's get Afro-Jamaican ethnicities.
Afro-Jamaican ethnicities. Based on slave ship records, enslaved Africans mostly came from the Akan people. Akwamu, Ashanti, Akim, Fante,
Fante and Bono,
followed by Igbo, Yoruba, Congo, Fon people, and Abio. Abibo people. Abibio people. Akan, then called Cormanti. Culture was the dominant culture in Jamaica.
So this is the dominant culture in Jamaica. So now we're seeing a link between the ethnicities and the tribes. So notice, now we can start to piece together those fill in the blanks. Remember, we had the map of where the tribes were in the US. There were a bunch of red areas. Now you're starting to see those red areas being filled in. These are the areas where the tribe of Benjamin were. Igbo, Congo, Fon, Abibio, and the Akan people, meaning the Ashanti, the Akayim, Fante, Bono, and Akwamu. Right? Read.
Originally,
the dominant African culture, the Akan was the dominant African culture in Jamaica. Why? Because they were there first. Remember, in the critical annals, in the annals of literature, they were there first. They were taken from Guinea first, prior to the Gold Coast, right? With the Igbo. Read.
Originally in early,
and there's a reason. Hold on. And there's a reason why they didn't go back to Guinea. Keep that in mind. There's a reason why they didn't go and take from the Akan people again. What happened the last time they brought Akan people to Jamaica? They rose hell. They said, listen, we got to do something different. There's a reason why the Akan people and people from Guinea were taken in 1517. But in the second half of the slave trade to the West Indies, during the transatlantic slave trade, they were only taking Igbo. They said, we need a slave population that's equally as hardworking, but not nearly as much trouble. Now, what you're going to find out is that the Igbo weren't less trouble. The Igbo weren't less trouble. They were far less trouble than the Maroons that they brought earlier, but they weren't less trouble. They're still Benjamite people. They caused some issues. Read.
Originally, in early British colonization, however, the island before the 1750s was in fact mainly Akan imported. However, between 1663 and 1700, only 6% of slave ships to Jamaica listed their origin as a Gold Coast.
They said, listen, we're not going back. We're not going back there for slaves. We're finished. They said, listen, you remember the last time we got slaves from the Gold Coast? Read.
While between 1700 and 1720, that figure went up to 27%.
Mm-hmm.
The number of Akan slaves arriving in Jamaica from Cormonton ports only increased in the early 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
But due to frequent rebellions from the then known Coromantee
Mm-hmm.
that often joined the slave rebellion group known as the Jamaican Maroons.
So what they were having happen is they were going to the Gold Coast and taking more of these and taking more Coromantee, and the Coromantee would get to Jamaica and say, "Hey, what's up, cuz?" And they would band with the Maroons and cause more issues. Go back to, but due to the frequent rebellions.
But due to the frequent rebellions from the then known Coromantee that often joined the slave rebellion group known as the Jamaican Maroons, other groups were sent to Jamaica.
So they said, listen, every time we try to bring these people, every time we try to get the Coromantee or the Akan people to Jamaica, they get here and they band with the enemy and cause us more problems. So you know what? We need to get some other tribes. Get somebody else. See, notice the divide that they're trying to create. This is the same reason why they refused to send the Maroons to the colonies in America. Because they knew if they sent the Maroons to the colonies in America, what's going to happen? Join together, and now you have a problem.
Bigger problem. Mm-hmm.
Read.
The Akan population was still maintained because they were the preference of the British planters in Jamaica because they were better workers, according to these planters.
So notice once again, they knew who they were taking. They weren't going in and blindly selecting random people. This also shows that there was a clear difference in Africa. There was a clear difference between Judah, Benjamin, and Levi within Africa. There was a clear cultural difference. See, one thing that sticks out about the tribe of Benjamin versus the tribe of Judah and Levi is that even through time, they remembered their history as Israelites. The tribe of Benjamin is probably the only tribe that throughout history maintained their knowledge of being Israelites. Granted, they did not always, they don't always keep the same customs of the scriptures. The only thing that they maintained is that they were Israelites. You following? That's why you see Jamaicans back in the 1800s calling on Jah. Now, obviously, Jah or Yah isn't the name of the Most High. However, it is the name of the golden calf that we called on. It is a God that the Hebrews worshipped. A lesser God, but a God nonetheless. So they maintained their knowledge of being Israelites. In fact, we have an image of a painting, an old painting of a leader back in Africa, in East Africa. Oh, do we have? He has the Mitri on. It's the colorful painting. What is that on his head? This is a Benjamite. What's that on his head? This painting was made in the time of the Indian Ocean slave trade. In the time of the Indian Ocean slave trade. That's Israelite garb, people. Wow. See, the tribe of Benjamin was one of the only tribes remaining that retained its knowledge of an Israelite ethnicity. For example, the Igbo people. The Igbo in Africa know that they're Israelites. They have known. They always knew. Now, notice what the Ish community came in and did though. The Ish community came in to the Igbo and gave them Judaism. How many of you know what that is? That's called quelling a movement. See, the problem is the Igbo not only the Igbo not only knew that they were Israelites, but they also had texts of the original Torah. They had fragments of the original Torah. So if these people were left to themselves believing that they're Israelites, what's going to begin to happen? They now begin to build up an Israelite identity separate from the Jews, which means that this is not a movement that the Jewish community can control. So they needed to co-opt the movement. Notice how all of a sudden in the last 20 years, all of a sudden there's an interest in finding the lost tribes. The Jewish people are all of a sudden so interested in finding the lost tribes. They're going to people who know that they're Israelites and saying, hey, you can come to Israel, put on this yarmulke, and go to the Wailing Wall. It's called co-opting a movement. The Igbo were just fine before the Jewish people came in and built synagogues. And you see, the same thing happened in the time of reggae. How many of you know that reggae was the original truth music? See, what happened is a man named Haile Selassie. How many of you know who Haile Selassie is? Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. See, a Jamaican activist named Marcus Garvey gave a prophecy saying that look to the east, where a black man in Africa shall raise up and free his people. And around the same time, Haile Selassie came into power in Ethiopia. The Jamaican people believed that the prophecy had come true through Haile Selassie. Keep in mind, Marcus Garvey did not like nor respect Haile Selassie. He called him a coward. Haile Selassie didn't even believe that he was a divine character. In fact, he was a Christian. Haile Selassie was a Christian. But you know why they introduced Haile Selassie and the Ethiopian ideology into the 12 tribes identity that already existed within Jamaica? See, the Jamaican idea of Israelites went from being we're Israelite by heritage to we're Israelite by zodiac. They co-opted the movement with astrology. So now the idea of Rastafarianism as it pertains to the truth, now they say your tribe is determined by your zodiac. Wow. Now, how do we know that this isn't a coincidence? Because there's a rapper, his name is Chingy. He's a protege of Ludacris. He found the truth earlier on and made a song called something about Judah, where he was proclaiming that he was an Israelite. Later on, he began to study astrology, and guess the conclusion that he came to. The 12 tribes are the 12 zodiacs. Remember, the scriptures say, be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Astrology is not for Israelites. It's witchcraft. It's evil. So they co-opted the movement with witchcraft. And they silenced the people through marijuana. How many of you know that marijuana is a sedative? How do you calm down a rowdy child? Back in the day, they used to a child when a child was in pain and their gums were in pain when they were teething, grandparents used to put a little bit of alcohol in their gums, right? And the same thing applies here. Marijuana, the marijuana movement didn't begin until Bob Marley brought it with reggae. Reggae existed prior to Bob Marley. Reggae existed prior to Bob Marley. But Bob Marley was pushed more so to the mainstream because of the message that he was sending. Bob Marley pioneered Rastafarianism while also pioneering marijuana within Jamaica. Notice there hasn't been nearly as many revolts or rebellions since then. Marijuana was used as a tool to shut the tribe of Benjamin in Jamaica down. It was used as a tranquilizer. How many of y'all knew that? That's why the scriptures say, be ye sober and vigilant. They made it religion to get high. And they took away your identity and gave you zodiacs. See, that's part of what made the Benjamites dangerous. Remember, it says that the Most High, when you look at Deuteronomy chapter 33, it says, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, and the Most High shall cover him all the day long. He shall dwell between his shoulders. The temple was within the land of Judah, was within the land of Benjamin. It was amongst the tribe of Benjamin. Right? These people held their identity for the longest period of time outside of Israel, but they needed to co-opt the movement. They needed to co-opt the movement. You hold your place?
Yes.
Great.
We're
according to Slave Voyage Archives.
Where's that now?
Right here. Wait. Salakia.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay. According to these planters, according to the Slave Voyage Archives, though the Igbo had the highest importation numbers, they were only imported to Montego Bay and St. Anne's Bay Port, while the Gold Coast, Mandiakan, were more dispersed across the island and were a majority imported to 7 to 14 of the island ports. Each parish has one port.
So it's what we went over earlier. The Akan were more spread out throughout the West Indies, whereas the Igbo, even though they were the most imported, they were only sent to two places, which is Montego Bay and St. Anne's Bay ports. Right? They were sent to two places, whereas the Akan people were spread out everywhere. So we know now that the Afro-Jamaicans descend from and can trace their heritage back to these respective areas within Israel. I mean, now we can trace them back to their respective areas within Africa and then back to Israel. Right?
Right.
Let's get the Maroons and Maroon culture.
The Maroons and Maroon culture and how it came about by Leanne Prendergast. This is from Miami scholar.library.miami.edu. In fact, among the Maroons and among the people brought to Jamaica as slaves in general, Akan culture influences predominated. Once of the characteristics most in pinpointing a group's origin in their language. This is very important when speaking of the Maroons because many of the slaves did not speak the same language as other slaves that joined them throughout the years. Many of the slaves brought over came from different parts of Africa and therefore were unable to communicate by verbal means with other slaves. That
was strategic, right? Because remember what kept happening. They kept taking slaves from the same areas that spoke the same language and bringing them in, and now they would band together. So they started going to other parts of Africa to get other tribes that were go to other tribes that were ultimately from the same family, because keep in mind, they needed slaves that could work a certain way. So they needed the same family, but a different tribe. I'll put it like this. They needed Benjamites. They needed Benjamites to work the West Indies. But the problem is that they kept taking Benjamites from the same areas. They would band together, and ultimately it would cause a problem. So instead of going to the same family under Benjamin, they went to another family under Benjamin that didn't speak the same language. So the two couldn't come together and unite against the Europeans. It was strategy. Read.
Instead, they often use body language to communicate, in particular hand gestures and various physical actions.
So they figured out how to communicate with each other. They figured it out. Read.
As time passed on, verbal communication improved among the slaves because they learned to communicate using their own language. They invented using variations of their previous language and that of the people who owned them. Oh, that's cool.
So they got better. So they learned to communicate with each other through hand and physical hand motions and stuff like that. And then eventually
the people who owned them.
And then eventually they started saying, all right, so now we can create our own language. Now they created using English and other forms of the language that they previously had. Read.
People that owned them. According to an author of that time, Brian Edwards, they, Maroons, are in general ignorant of our language. He said that their language had a mix between African dialects, Spanish, and broken English.
So this is what we know today as patois, Jamaican patois, a level of pidgin, right? And these are the same languages that we find within Freetown as well. We find these same languages back in Freetown. Creole, the Creole communities of Freetown, right? Now, so these particular people, the Akan people, were the largest population throughout Jamaica and throughout the West Indies, where many different cultures and languages, stemming from the Igbo as well as Bantu peoples of East Africa. So a lot of the Bantu peoples within East Africa are actually related to the Igbo and the Akan people in West Africa, right? Many East African tribes are from the same families as the Akan people, being from the tribe of Benjamin. Although there are considerably large populations of Judah within the East Africa as well. For example, Rwanda. You have a lot of the tribe of Judah in Rwanda, especially in South Africa. But particularly the Zulu tribe within South Africa is actually Benjamite, right? So, and if anybody knows anything about Shaka Zulu, I think it's pretty evident that he was from the tribe of Benjamin and the way that they did war. How this part of sub-Saharan Africa is divided, meaning East Africa, how East Africa is divided is unclear. However, we see that the predominating cultures within East Africa is Judah and Benjamin, giving the slight nod to Benjamin, right? So the larger population within East Africa is Benjamite, but there is a mixed population of Judah and Benjamin within East Africa. It is via the Indian Ocean slave trade. We have an image of the Indian Ocean slave trade. Via the Indian Ocean slave trade, these Benjamite Africans were brought to various countries such as Madagascar, Indonesia, Europe, parts of Southeast Asia, as well as the Middle East and North Africa. Right? So it was the East Indian slave trade brought about more. The East African slave trade brought about more dispersion for the tribe of Benjamin. meaning that in the UK you see a large population of Negro population within the UK. Majority of the time they're Benjamite, right? Black populations in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, most likely Benjamite. Black populations within the Middle East, most likely Benjamite through the East African slave trade, right? Ashanti of Ghana. Let's get the Ashanti of Ghana. Let's prove that they're Hebrew.
The Ashanti of Ghana. The Ashanti, the predominant tribe in Ghana, formerly known as the Gold Coast, is predominantly believed to have come from North Africa. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And many fingers point to Egypt or Assyria.
Mm-hmm.
It has been pointed out by the first white man that came to Ghana and met the Ashanti, noted the Egyptian-like architecture and design.
Mm-hmm.
But just as equally, some of these so-called Egyptian and or Assyrian traits could also point to a Hebraic origin.
Mm-hmm.
For Israel was captive in both places and left in an indelible mark on both, as well as a little Egyptian and Assyrian influence rubbed off somewhat of Israel on Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Also noted by such men was Semitic or Arabic appearance, facial features of the Ashanti, as well as reddish hue to their brown skin, which is also an Igbo trait, which is akin to Adam.
Now, notice what they said there. They said, as well as the reddish hue of their brown skin, which is also an Igbo trait, which is akin to Adam. Read.
Adam, whose name means red earth, and David, who said to have a ruddy reddish complexion, and both of which were of dark complexion to boot.
So they knew that the original Hebrews were black. And it was by that standard of the original Hebrews being black that they built their case on the Ashanti being Hebrews. This goes to show that that back in the day, we looked at color differently than the way that we look at it now. There was no such thing as dark-skinned, light-skinned. When you call a black person red, it's not referring to their skin being red, it's referring to a hue. When you call a black person yellow, you're not referring to their skin color, you're referring to their hue. So we looked at and referred to color differently. Like if you look at me, I have a red undertone. So I would have been called ruddy. I would have been called red. Versus someone with a yellow or gold undertone being called yellow. So color was looked at and referred to differently in this time. It's common knowledge to date that the original Israelites were people of color, and that the people of sub-Saharan Africa were in fact descended from the same Israelites that fled from Israel in 70 AD. Common knowledge. The Ashanti of Ghana and the Igbo tribes are tribes that stand out because these are the tribes that have already been identified. These tribes stand out from the tribes that have already been identified. Let's go back to the Ashanti of Ghana. Continue.
It's common knowledge to date that the original...
Their sanitations.
The Ashanti of Ghana. Their sanitation laws closely mirror that of what is written in the Torah. They were originally a pastoral people until they were forced to move into the bush, which is similar to what happened to the Igbos. The selling of prisoners of war as slaves or the enslavement of their fellow man in order to pay off a debt, as it is found in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. The Ashanti society. So
these people practice taboo the same way that we found the tribe of Naphtali in the South Pacific practicing taboo. Laws of cleanliness, right? And purification. They were also a pastoral people, meaning that they were shepherds. They were forced to move into the bush. So you know how it is where they make it seem like the black people in Africa live in bushes in the jungle. No, it wasn't originally like that. Black people were not living in the jungle. We were pastoral people. We were shepherds. We were forced into the bush. Read.
The Ashanti society is a patriarchal one. This is a tool of the This is the tool of the authority, which is uncannily similar to that of what is called in synagogues as the seat of Moses and the chair of Elijah.
So they practice patriarchal lineage. They don't do matriarch. They don't go based off of the matriarchy being the most powerful in the family. They don't do that. It's patriarchy, just like Hebrews. See that, and a lot of people look at that as something that's supposed to be common. It's not. It's not common. A lot of when you look at a lot of Gentile cultures, it practices a matriarchy as opposed to a patriarchy, where you look at the oldest woman or the elder woman of the family and she run everything. Even though there's a man present. That's not the way they worked. That's not the way Hebrews worked. Read.
There is a tool of authority which is uncannily similar to that of what is called synagogues at the seat of Moses and the chair of Elijah. They practice intertribal marriages according to Numbers 36, verse 5 through 12. They also had cross-cousin marriages according to Numbers 36, 11 through 12.
Meaning marriages breaching tribal lines. Meaning a Benjamite marrying a Levite, or a Benjamite marrying a Judite. Cross-cousin marriages. Read.
The preservation of the family line is of the utmost importance, and it is considered a curse if a line dies out, or if a woman is infertile, miscarries, or a man dies with no sons. Is this not Hebrew? All of this is Hebrew. Legacy is one of the most important things to a Hebrew male, and to a Hebrew woman. Right? Read. This is a very Hebraic trait, for we see the patriarchs and matriarchs of Scripture struggle with infertility, and the patriarchs often pleaded to God for sons.
For sons. Sons are probably the most important thing. If you don't have a son, your line doesn't continue. Read.
So in Israel, the preservation and perpetuation of the family line was very important to them, as it is with the Ashanti. The whole process of the rituals and customs surrounding marriage is much like that of how Isaac married Rebekah in Genesis 24. In so much as we even find a post-temple tradition, a cup of wine is given to the contracting familial parties, and the drain cup is then smashed under the feet of the groom. This seems to indicate that if the Ashanti are indeed Israelites, they come from the post-Second Temple era and the Babylonian and Assyrian exile era.
So the two contracting families, meaning the fathers of the bride and the groom, had a cup of wine which they would both drink from, and when the cup was empty, the groom would smash it underfoot. That's Hebrew. That was done in Hebrew ceremonies, right? The same way that the Hebrews kept their ceremonies is the exact same way that the Ashanti were practicing theirs. Read.
This seems to indicate that if the Ashanti are indeed Israelites, they come from the post-Second Temple era and the Babylonian and Assyrian exile era. An Ashanti mother is separated and considered unclean 8 days after childbirth, and it is only on the 8th day that the child is thus named.
The naming ceremonies among Israelites.
Leviticus 15.
That's only something that Hebrews did. Hebrews do naming ceremonies on the 8th day, which is usually the day of circumcision. Right? It's a big party. It's a big event where everybody comes over. You do the circumcision, or you have the daughter and you name that child. You give that child a name. Read.
On the 8th day that the child is thus named, Leviticus 15, 1929. All as we see are Hebraic traditions and laws.
So everything that these people did amongst the Ashanti was purely Hebrew. Everything they did was Hebraic. See, and this is what I want to address as well. See, in Africa, this is used as proof that they're Hebrews. But when we go to the Native Americans and we read the same exact things, Elder, We read these same exact things amongst the Native Americans in North America, right? These same exact traditions. See, with the Native, when we bring that information about the Native Americans, it's, well, Canaanites had Hebrew customs too. But when we read these same things about the Ashanti in Africa, obviously they're Hebrew. Listen, Hebraic customs, we look at Hebraic customs now differently than we used to back then. And the reason why is because certain customs have become more common, right? People don't look at not eating pork as a big deal anymore. People don't look at not eating as circumcising as a normal thing now. Well, back then, circumcising was not a normal thing. Back then, not eating pork was not a normal thing. Now you have people on a bunch of well, I'm vegan and I'm this and I'm that and I don't do this and I'll do that. It has nothing to do with scripture. It has nothing to do with tradition or culture. It has to do with preference, right? But now we look at history through the lens of the way we see things today. Fact of the matter is that in the time of the Hebrews, back in this time when the Ashanti were discovered, circumcision was still rare. If it wasn't rare, why would they bring it up? If everybody was being circumcised, why would they bring out circumcision as a standard for being Hebrew? Isn't everybody that they find Hebrew then? These customs, these laws of cleanliness, the patriarchy, all of these are things that highlight Israelite culture. I don't care if you're a Hebrew. A lot of Hebrew, listen, Esau is Hebrew. Israelite custom and Hebrew custom are two very different things. Mm-hmm. Right? So when we're looking at these particular customs, yes, they are very, very unique at this time. That's why they're a big deal when they bring it up. Like, oh yeah, they did the 8-day circumcision. Like that wasn't something that was being done often at that time. It was particular to Hebrews, right? Esau was the son of Isaac, and he wasn't circumcising his children. Ishmael, the son of Abraham, he didn't circumcise his children. These things were made to be distinctive of the children of Israel. Therefore, the color lines must go. Let's get the next quote. The author.
The author has joined form editions. Mm-hmm. First, a minute account of the English settlements on the Gold Coast and in Senegambia. The second of the Senegambia.
So it says first a minute account of the English settlements on the Gold Coast and in Senegambia. So this is where a lot of Benjamites dwell, right? Read.
The second, the present price of slaves. Mm-hmm. For merely a Negro slave was not to be got so cheap as for a few yards of coarse cloth. Mm-hmm. And toward the end of the last century, the Negroes sold a full-grown Negro slave for 2 or 3 quarts of brandy. Mm-hmm. But the price has since been greatly raised by the competition of European slave merchants. Mm-hmm. That price depends on the peaceable or warlike disposition of the Negro princess.
The Negro who?
Princes.
Of the Negro princes. Right now, what it's talking about here is the price of these Negroes. These Benjamite slaves, the slaves that were taken to the West Indies from the Gold Coast and Senegambia, were originally sold cheap to the point to where they wound up being expensive. The price was made based off of how hard are they to handle. It says the price depends on what, Reed?
The price depends on the peaceable or warlike disposition of the Negro princes.
Why would they call them princes? Why would they call them Negro princes? How many of you know what Israel means? Israel means prince of the power, right? This quote comes from the Annals of Literature, or the Critical Review, or the Annals of Literature, volume 57, on page 144. When you look at page 144, go back 2 pages to 140, and you'll see that they speak of deporting Jews from Lisbon to the Isles of St. Thomas, referring to them as Black Jews. The Europeans knew that the Africans they were trading were Jews, hence why they referred to them as the Negro princes. We went over this in a lesson on Judah and a lesson on Levi. It says the price depends on the peaceable or warlike disposition of the Negro princes. The more difficult they are to deal with, the less expensive they are. And I'll tell you what, the Benjamites were hard to deal with. They sold very cheap. Read.
Negro princes, and on the greater or smaller numbers of slaving ships.
Or on the greater or smaller numbers of slaving ships. So based off of the criteria that was set concerning, number one, the curses. Number one, the curses. Number two, they have to be fierce and ruthless warriors, known for piracy, close to Ephraim. I didn't touch on that. The West Indies are the same isles that the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh dwelt on. So yes, they dwell very close to Ephraim, right? Sometimes on the same island as Ephraim and Manasseh. So yes, they dwelt close to Ephraim and Manasseh, and they also were still sandwiched between Ephraim and Judah. Remember, in the land of Israel, they had Judah to the south and Ephraim to the north. Now they have Ephraim to the south and Judah to the north. And lastly, they are untamed and wild like a wolf. And maroon literally means untamed and wild. Right? Today, the children of Israel, the children of Benjamin can be found in Africa. More specifically, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Congo, Madagascar, and throughout East Africa. They're also found in the West Indies, Jamaica, Cuba, the Bahamas, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Bermuda, Barbados, Antigua, etc. They also can be found in the United States, throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Indonesia. Notable biblical figures from the tribe of Benjamin are the Apostle Paul, Mordecai, and Queen Esther. And obviously we know King Saul. This is the conclusion of the Children of Israel series, but as we find out more information and evidence as it pertains to the tribes of Israel, we'll continue to bring forth short videos or lessons concerning the tribes of Israel. Khan? Oh, yes. We have an image of the brother Usain Bolt, a Benjamite. These are Benjamite brothers after they obviously dominated. Listen. Nobody was doing nothing with Usain Bolt, okay? I mean, I think everybody in here knows who that brother is. Jamaica is probably one of the most dominating countries as it pertains to the Olympics in the world. In the world, people. I mean, it's not close, right? All praises to the Most High, everybody. Once again, the purpose of these lessons is to help our people identify their heritage, so that we can work on spreading the gospel to the Jews first and the Gentile. That's the point of these lessons. We've gone all the way from Reuben all the way now to Benjamin, including Dan. to show our people who it is that they are according to the scriptures, who they are according to the scriptures. And now we have the responsibility of evangelizing, going to these people in the lands where they dwell, spreading the word, and continuing to bring this and continuing to bring the end of Esau's kingdom. Because how many of y'all know that the end can't come until the 144,000 have been sealed in their right hands and in their foreheads? Khan? All praises to the Most High once again, everybody. Now, that's the conclusion of our lesson. But if we have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat. Please drop them in the chat, and we will go over those now. I don't know. Can't see what we got. You got it there? Okay, nothing so far. Do we have any questions or comments in the room?
Wonderful lesson. I learned a lot today.
All praise to the Most High. Praise to the Most High. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Maroons and the Jamaican government are currently in a heated I would say, in a sense, I would call it a cold war, as opposed, because it's not a hot war yet, but it looks like it could turn that way. But what the Maroons want is their own independent state. It's the Maroon leaders have come to a place where they want to be independent from the Jamaican government itself, right? So one of the leaders of the Maroons made a statement not too long ago concerning this particular issue, and let's just say, should the Jamaican government not handle this thing the right way, we could see a resurgence of of chaos brought on by the Jamaican Maroons, even though their quest never really stopped. I believe the elder and I talked about this a couple of years ago, where the Jamaican government was having some issues, particularly with the Maroons in Jamaica. Yep. So if we don't have any more comments, and it doesn't look like we do, we're going to begin to wrap up for today. Make sure you all like, share, comment, subscribe, and all of that. Definitely, because keep in mind, we can sit up here and teach, but if you all aren't responding, if you aren't sharing and sending it out, this work doesn't get done. As part of what we do here is being able to get before you all, educate you, and educate our people. So do your part, share, like, subscribe. If you would like to donate, we have our tithes and donations Cash App right here. For those who are a part of the church, you would send tithes as opposed to donations. Those who just follow us online, definitely send a donation. You put in the description what you want those funds to be for, whether it's for feast days or whether it's for the streaming platform or anything like that. Send it. Mark it in the description as to what you want those finances to be used for, and that's what they'll be used for. And we also have our website right here. Make sure that you all go there and get registered. We have our contact information on there as well for those who would like to get baptized or inquire about getting baptized. We have our email there. You can email us concerning baptisms as well. We also have our videos and everything like that. We have eventually we're going to be streaming from our website. So keep an eye out for that eventually at some point. I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Sabbath. All praises to the Most High, Ahaya, by Hashem Yeshaya, Wa Rawak once again. I want to say Thawada to the elder for stepping in and reading earlier, Thawada. And we're going to be back next week. Not next week, the week after next with the lesson. So we're going to be digging. We've been chomping at the bit to get to start talking about some of these topics about what's going on in the earth. But we needed to finish this series first before we jumped into that.
We're going to come before next week too to kind of give a preview of what's coming next.
Okay, yeah, we're going to be here next week to give a preview as to what we're going to be coming and doing next. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting next couple of weeks. Jumping back into the mix and being able to address some of these issues and some of the struggles amongst our people in this particular time. The water, brother Ra.
Wada.
All praise to the Most High once again. And all of you be blessed. Stay prayed up. We're living in a wild time. Do not compromise. I know there's a lot of pressure. It's starting to come down to a time period where now a lot of us are being forced to make a choice, to choose between what we know is right and what we know is wrong. I mean, the crossroad was going to come at some point. The scriptures say, "Sir, choose you this day who you will serve," whether it be God or mammon, right? And that's usually what they're using. They're using finances to sway people, and that's the problem. Is that our people don't have enough faith in the understanding of what your situation may be currently, whatever your financial situation may be currently. The Most High has the power to make a poor man rich. Right? It's not that it's nothing for the Most High to give wealth. Ever heard of Abraham? There's nothing to make. It takes nothing for the Most High to make a poor man rich. The scriptures in Deuteronomy, it says that it's the Most High who gives us the power to gain wealth. Right? So don't think that you have to acquiesce to a system for finances. The scripture says, choose you who you will serve, God or mammon. Which do you serve? You have a choice. Khan, you have a choice. If you're too focused and caught up on how you're going to make money, how you're going to get rich, how you're going to do this or how you're going to go do that as opposed to doing the work. How many of you know the scriptures say, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. You do the work. You focus on the Most High's work, and everything else that you have your hands in, he's going to increase anyways. The scriptures say you're so busy building your own house, you've neglected to build the Most High's. How many of you know that if you build the Most High's house, he'll build your house for you? All praise to the Most High. Remember, in this time, do not acquiesce. The Most High's got you. No matter how tight the situation may be, no matter how bleak it may look, no matter how tight of a corner it may look like you're squeezed into, the scriptures say that he never puts you in a situation without a way out. There's always a way. But if you're too negative and thinking about the problem instead of thinking about solutions, you'll never see that he gave you a door, an open door. All praises to the Most High. Y'all be blessed, be safe. Remember, continue to store up. We're living in a time. There's a food shortage and all that thing. Store up on water, store up on food, grow microgreens, get in your backyard, start planting stuff. This is the time that we're in. All praise to the Most High. Haya Bashem Yeshaya while we walk. Our prayers are for you all. Thank you for your prayers for us as well. And I want to say Shabbat Shalom. Y'all be blessed.